Use these monsters more for dnd5e levels 6 through 10 today on Dungeons and Taverns. Hello and welcome to Dungeons and Taverns. I'm your host Saul Sunforge, and I've been a DM since I was in the Navy back in 2002. On this channel I bring that experience to you in the form of maps, tips, homebrew, spells, enemies, stories, and much more. There's also my campaign, The Dirty 20. First up is a Chasme of CR6 on page 57 of the Monster Manual. A Chasme is a large fly that has humanoid features about it. It's a demon. First up we have a Chasme of a CR6 on page 57 of the Monster Manual. A Chasme is basically a large fly that has humanoid features and a large proboscis. These demons live to torture, and so they are used to punish traitorous demons or the would-be do-good adventurers that cross its path. Chasme has an ability called Drone, which within 30 feet of the Chasme, players have to roll a DC 12 con save or fall unconscious for 10 minutes. A creature that can't hear the drone automatically succeeds on that save, however. The effect on the creature ends if it takes damage or if another creature takes an action to splash it with holy water. If a creature's saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, it's immune to the drone for the next 24 hours. The Chasme also has magic resistance and the ability to spider climb, where it climbs upside down on difficult surfaces. So I would rule that ability for the spider climb, since it could climb on difficult surfaces upside down without needing to make an ability check. I feel that their climb speed should be 20 feet, since their walk speed is 20 feet, separate from their fly speed of 60 feet, which is well more than enough to overrun most party members, so they're not going to be able to escape. So if you cut off a party's means of escape, you can really put the pressure on them as a DM, and I advise you to do it. One last cool thing about the Chasme is that its proboscis, when it pierces you to do damage, that damage is necrotic damage. That's very rare. The second creature is a Oni, which you can find on page 239 of the Monster Manual. Oni is a CR7. It's a giant type demonic ogre with a sort of an oriental vibe to them. They can be combined with hags to craft a compelling story arc, as Oni can be suitable bodyguards for a hag. Oni are large, can fly, and can go invisible or create darkness at will. When you picture Oni, think of the traditional picture of the boogeyman. Even in the description of the Oni, in nursery rhymes, Oni are fearsome boogeymen that haunt the nightmares of children and adults alike. Yet they are very real and always hungry. They find human babies especially delicious. Oni look like demonic ogres with blue or green dark hair and a pair of short ivory horns protruding from their foreheads. Their eyes are dark with strikingly white pupils, and their teeth and claws are jet black. So you can make these things terribly horrific for the party. If you combine this encounter with darkness somehow, or the Onis at will create darkness in the middle of, say, an old castle or a crypt, a graveyard, really anywhere, if it's like in the middle of a storm or something like that, that would make it even more epic, I feel. As I said, Oni can cast darkness at will, but they can also cast invisibility at will. They can charm the party members to be on their side so they can make the fight even more difficult. They use a glaive for their weapon, which is a D10 plus 4 slashing damage in small or medium form, or 2d10 plus 4 slashing if they're in their normal large form. They have claw damage, and they have multi-attacks, so they can make 2 attacks with their claws or their glaive. Oni are shape changers, and so they can live, among other humanoids because they can change into those humanoids and don't have to reveal their true form. A thing that makes the Oni more of a challenge, besides going invisible, is that they regenerate 10 hit points at the start of its turn if it has at least 1 hit point left. And so if you could go invisible at will, you can regenerate practically, whenever you want to as the Oni. And so, as the DM, I'd advise you, a few times throughout the fight to go invisible for a round or two, maybe, to heal back some of the health and become a little bit more of an annoying, pressing threat. The third monster is a Hydra of a CR8 on page 190 of the monster manual. The Hydra, to me, is a truly terrifying monster. For starters, it has 5 heads that all get to attack. Although you can, as the DM, you can give it more or less heads depending on how you want to do the challenge. But be mindful that once a Hydra loses its head, if it doesn't die at the end of the round, it regains 2 heads for every head that it loses, and it loses a head every 25 damage that it takes per turn. So you can see how this quickly can become an increasingly more difficult and demanding problem for any party if the Hydra ends up getting 8, 9, 10 heads and it gets 10 attacks per turn. Eventually the party is going to succumb to that Hydra, regardless of what level that party is. And so Hydra is a really good enemy to place in really a lot of different ideal places. Typically, you want to place it where there's a little bit of water, like a swamp, somewhere that's murky, a bog, something like that. Hydras have a swim speed of 30 feet, so they can keep up with most party members, but they also can breathe underwater, or excuse me, they can also hold their breath underwater for up to an hour. So they can set up devious, clever ambushes for an unwary party, and the party will have instant pressure at their feet and have to contend with this problem. I can see it being an amazing counter all around. With a Hydra, you really can't miss. Next to last, we have a Treant on page 289 of the Monster Manual. Treants are usually good. They're chaotic good alignment. A Treant is a sentient, alive tree. They're huge. They're plant-based. And typically, you're not going to have a good party fight any type of good creatures unless it's some type of unique situation. So what I was thinking for the Treant is you can have a grove, a druid's grove be corrupted, or you can have a wizard or a warlock, corrupt these Treants to their side to, constantly maybe attack a city or something like that. You could create a plot line around it. Treants, since because of their size, they're considered a siege monster, and so they deal double damage to objects and structures. So this makes them amazing for attacking fortifications of a city. And they, I'm sure if you've seen Lord of the Rings, they hurl these giant boulders up to 180 feet that do 4d10 plus 6 bludgeoning damage. So if you have a row of treants, these big, huge, pissed off trees, just bowling boulders down the way, at a group of enemies, at a group of structures, that would be a very terrible sight to behold, I think. And I feel that they also have an ability called animate trees, which they can animate one tree that's within 60 feet of it, and as long as that tree stays within 120 feet of them, or until the treant dies, that tree gets the stats of a treant. And so essentially you'll have, if you have 6 treants, you could have the potential for 12. And so these monsters are scary to behold. And party members tend to treat larger enemies with more caution just because of their size. So you could even have a gargantuan enemy that's just like a level 1 enemy, but the party will have no idea just because of the size, unless you give them a lot of context clues about that. And finally, we have an Aboleth on page 13 of the Monster Manual. I was going to go with a Death Slad because Slads have some amazing abilities, but we'll cover Slads in a different video. Aboleths are full of lore and information, but they're very terribly evil creatures and they're terribly old. In the lore cases, Aboleths are considered to be the oldest creatures and sometimes predating the world that they're on in the first place. They can breathe air and water, they have telepathy, and they can swim 40 feet, so they can outswim most party members. And so escape through means of retreat is usually not an option. Aboleths expel a mucus cloud while they're underwater, and they surround themselves with this transformative mucus. And any creature that touches that or hits them with a melee attack within 5 feet of it must make a DC 14 con saving throw. On a failure, the creature is diseased for 1d4 hours, and then that diseased creature can only breathe underwater. And then if if a creature communicates back to an Aboleth telepathically, the Aboleth learns the creature's greatest desires, and if the Aboleth can see the creature at the same time as they're communicating. In addition, Aboleth, if this wasn't enough, they have a charm ability called Enslave that they use 3 times a day. And if a creature becomes enslaved by them, then the Aboleth can use a legendary action called Psychic Drain as a combo to drain 3d6 psychic damage to the charmed person, and however much that damage is, they get back in health equally. So Aboleths are very dangerous, and any group that has veterans in it, once they hear that an Aboleth has landed down on the table, they're going to take the battle seriously, guaranteed. And there you go. There you have it. That was my video on creatures levels 6 through 10. In order to throw out your party, some of those creatures may be creatures that are new to you. And eventually I'm going to be doing this series for the other alternative manuals that you can purchase. And we'll go back through them again. And as well as videos on creatures according to their type. And I was thinking about even doing one on creatures according to their environment. So stick around, stay tuned to those. If you enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up and go ahead and give me a subscribe. And if you know any DMs in your life who could use some of this information, or any players who can use the advice of a DM coming from a teaching perspective, then send them my way. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.